Dr. Sid Williams used to say that. Keep the main thing the main thing. And it's focused on chiropractic philosophy, and getting that out to the masses. So all these additional things are always for the one purpose, actually to promote like an innate led life. Realistically, I would say that chiropractic philosophy has informed my life, has allowed me to make life choices that are in alignment. Like, even if you think back, Colin, like you already knew like cholesterol meds were a bad idea. Why did you know that? Because you're like, no, that's against that kind of goes, it's irrational when you understand that there's a universal intelligence, it's all matter, which continually gives its properties and actions, thus maintaining this matter in existence. It just goes against that. So you're like, no, wrong. Well, now we're being shown that, yeah, we were right. You know what I mean? During the pandemic, masks, oh no, that's wrong. It doesn't line up with our philosophy. 6 feet apart doesn't line up with our philosophy. You know, getting injected to have a fake immunity doesn't align up. You see what I'm saying? Even when people ask about diet and stuff, they're always like, what's the best diet? And I believe that there are specific diets that will help certain people in certain ways. But the overarching, if you have no interference, right, and you're a connected human being, just look at how God designed it. Look at innate wisdom. It's a regenerative farm is the way you should eat. Whatever's on a regenerative farm is good for you. Like, our philosophy gives us the ability to live with life without fear, as Fred Barge wrote in his book from 40, 50, 60 years ago, or something like that. But because I've stayed true to that, I would say that I've been given opportunities that maybe others haven't. I've been very close to Robert Kennedy here lately and helping with the campaign, and, been offered positions and different things like that for the Make America Healthy Again movement. But the only reason that is because we have a principle and a philosophy that's in alignment with what the world is looking for.
Welcome to the Vitalistic Voice. I'm Dr. Colin Elkin. Today, I can't tell you how I've been sitting on pins and needles for this interview because one of my very, very good friends for a long time, I hold him in ultimate esteem and have so much respect for him. He is really the picture of principled chiropractic. He lives it. He has lived it in his family. And I know you're going to love this interview because Dr. Gil Bohemier, a fellow Canadian who's now defected from the People's Republic of Canada and is now living in the States, but he is such an articulate, lovable guy to listen to. And I know you're going to love this interview. Dr. Gil, I'm so grateful that you're on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. Let's have some fun.
Well, this is awesome, and I don't know where this is going to go, but I know you're going to take it in ways that are even going to expand my mind here. So, I'd love to go back to the beginning, and I remember, gosh, meeting you is probably in the early 2000s, so we're going back 20 years at least, and you were in practice in Winnipeg, Canada. So, and I remember first meeting you, and it's funny because I was actually at a friend's wedding in Winnipeg, driving around Winnipeg for the very first time, and this is going back maybe in the late 90s. And all I saw everywhere was Bohemian Chiropractic, Bohemian Chiropractic. There's a whole bunch of Bohemian. I'm thinking, who the heck is this Bohemian? And then sure enough, I meet you, and it all comes together.
That's funny. I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah, I'd love to hear. It was actually Dr. Lori Petrilli and Lawrence Schledowitz. I was at their wedding.
Oh,
My wife was the maid of honor, and
lovely people. Love those people. They're great.
yeah. So, and it was a great wedding. But I specifically remember, and in fact, I got pulled over by a Winnipeg police officer because I was speeding. I didn't know the speed limit in Lori's car. And sure enough, I see all these Bohemian chiropractors. So I'd love to know the history of you because you grew up in a family of chiropractic. I mean, your family is expansive when it comes to chiropractic. So tell us a little bit about your entry into chiropractic, your childhood, how that all transpired.
Oh, wow. Well, you want the long version or the short version? Obviously it's because of my father. My father became a chiropractor because he was a sick kid who had sinus issues and sinus migraines. He would literally use a bottle of Dristan a day, to the point where, my grandparents bought a caseload from the local pharmacist. So for about 8 years, like, my mother just remembers driving, like when they were dating, where he'd have one hand on the steering wheel and one on a bottle of Dristan, and there was always empties on the floor. Like, that's how bad his issues were. And, of course, against his father's wishes, because his father thought that, my grandfather thought chiropractors were quacks. back in the whatever that was, 1960s. Um, but then the neighbor actually gave him change and paid for his first few chiropractic adjustments. Said, you need to go see my chiropractor, who was Dr. Henry Marcoux back then. And I think he's still alive and practicing now. He's got to be in his 90s now. I'm not joking either. I do believe that that is true. Um, but after about 3 months of adjustments, like on my dad described it like everything just drained after one adjustment. And the guy, for some reason, the chiropractor had a sink in the corner of his office. And he went to the sink and just, it came out of all of his sinuses in his nose. And he never had a sinus problem since then. So he became a chiropractor because that happened to him at around 18 years old. Right. And I guess my dad had such like, I want to say charisma or such a incredible personality that like he just attracted a bunch of people and people I think just said, I want to be like this guy. And then all of a sudden, like everybody became chiropractors. His brothers, his sister, his brother-in-laws, cousins, everybody became chiropractors. And now we have, I think it's 46 chiropractors in our family, which is pretty
And
incredible.
I just find that absolutely incredible to even think about that because your family is so expansive. And I gotta just share this because one of my absolute favorite times through my chiropractic career was we actually did a seminar together in Winnipeg, and it
Yes.
was on the day of your Uncle Jerry's 60th birthday. And we went to the backyard party for Uncle Jerry, and there was the whole Bohemier and Champagne and Desaulnier and all the
Yeah.
families came together. There was probably a couple hundred people there, and it was
Yeah.
one of the best times I've ever had. And most of them were
Full
chiropractors.
stage, the stage was built. They had full on music playing. That was a fun time. Yeah.
It was just such a blast.
No,
So
I have such a special family. I mean, it's incredible to grow up like that because, ultimately it's number one, it's all I knew. So that was normal to me. Right. So when I went to chiropractic college, I just assumed that assumed very wrongly that everybody just grew up the same way. That's why they wanted to become chiropractors, that they've been adjusted their whole lives, that they not taken drugs, not been vaccinated. Like I thought that was just normal, right? But clearly I was totally wrong. I remember Fred Barge, who was doing like a guest lecture in our first philosophy class. We were a class of 350 people at Life University in 1996. And he asked everybody, he's like, who here has been adjusted their whole lives, never been vaccinated, never taken medication? And I'm like, oh, it's everybody, right? So I raised my hand and he looks around and he goes, one. And he points to me and I'm sitting like near the back and everybody turns and I turn beet red and I like slowly lower my hand, right? And he's like, I bet you I know your father. Who is your father? So I said my dad's name and he goes, of course I know. Of course I know Gil. It was unbelievable. So yeah,
oh, that's
that's
incredible. Yeah, and I remember, and I never got the pleasure of meeting your dad before he passed away, but your dad has left such a legacy behind him,
oh
and everybody
amazing.
in your family talks about the influence that he had on them,
Yeah,
getting into the profession.
definitely. Yeah, and me as well, obviously. I mean, that's why I became a chiropractor because I saw how much my dad loved it. That's ultimately why I chose to become a chiropractor. There was never any pressure, by the way. There's no like, you're going to be a chiropractor. My dad was never like that. He's like, you just follow your dreams, not my dreams, not anybody else's dreams, your dreams.
Yeah,
Anyway,
awesome.
it was awesome. Yeah.
So, and then you got into practice, and you actually started practicing in that office in Winnipeg, in downtown
Yeah,
Winnipeg, with your sister.
correct. Yeah. In 2000, well, I actually had 6 months of work with my father before he passed away. And then I was alone for a short period, and my sister had actually maybe 2 or 3 months later had graduated, so she joined me, and we worked together for several years until she moved to Vancouver to practice in Vancouver. And she just actually sold her practice, and she's been traveling the world for the last like 9 months now.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah,
That's awesome.
pretty awesome.
Awesome. So, and this is the really cool thing, and the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, Joel, because you had such an influence on many chiropractors throughout Canada, but specifically in the Winnipeg area, because you used to host trainings for many of the local Winnipeg chiropractors to come to your office and train on different office procedures, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, office procedures and just like yeah, ability to like share the message kind of as truthfully and straightforward as possible. Like, so we work on all kinds of aspects. And I don't know why I started. I think I started doing that because maybe I had the practice was doing pretty well and people would start asking me questions. And so I'm like, well, just come over. Let's just like, let me show you what I'm doing. Basically, that's kind of how that started. Yeah.
So, and then how did the whole transition go? Because you had an amazing practice in Winnipeg. You were seeing, as I remember us talking 14, 15, 1,600 people a week there and very, very busy. And then you made the transition to move to Naples, Florida. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Well, I feel like I had accomplished, like I had hit all my goals, if you will. That sounds so annoying, maybe. I hope it's not. But I had hit my goals and I had watched what had happened to several chiropractors kind of as they went through their career where they like did really well and then it kind of like slowly dwindled. And it wasn't bad or anything like that, but it was just like I feel like there's something else for me. And then the opportunity arose to come to Naples, Florida, to train chiropractors to open up MaxLiving health centers. And I felt like, yeah, I feel like I would have even broader impact, helping those young chiropractors just start and open their practices and kind of do amazing things. So that's why I chose to do it. And it just happened to be in Naples, Florida on the beach, living in paradise. So it checked off all the boxes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's awesome. So you uproot your family. You had two young children at the time. You
Yeah.
bring them down to Florida. You start practicing there, and you have your training center there. And then the transition. I mean, you've continued on a busy practice there at Trinity Chiropractic,
Yeah.
and now you transition into working with Sayer G.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, like, here's the interesting part. And I hope if you're watching this and you have kids, not super young, but at a certain point, I think it's important to like talk to your kids about, what's happening in your life in terms of like your practice life. And, my father was the president of the Manitoba Chiropractors Association. And, there was, a lot of, vitriol between, the chiropractic factions and stuff like that. But then at one point, I'll share that this is the long version of the story because it informs why I joined Sayer G and why we've done a few things that we've done. Because I feel like as a teenager, my father shared with me kind of what he was going through. And one of the things that they went through was in 1993 on the head, the in the Winnipeg Free Press, they had every year the pediatric death review and the top 10 causes of death from kids from the previous year, and they would make their recommendations. And in 1993, the number one recommendation was do not take your child to a chiropractor in the Winnipeg Free Press. So my dad was the president at that time. Dad looked into like how can you make this recommendation? So it turns out not one of those kids had ever seen a chiropractor, the kids who died. Neither had their parents. That their parents had never been to a chiropractor either. This was clearly just a smear campaign against chiropractors. And so they sued the College of Physicians and Surgeons. And in that lawsuit, I got to see, my dad's not around anymore, so I can say this, but I got to read some of the documents he would show me, like when they subpoenaed the documents from the College of Physicians and Surgeons against chiropractors, there was a moving truck that showed up to the Manitoba Chiropractors, so full of documents. And literally, they had coordinated efforts across the country on how to hurt chiropractors, including, Colin, you might even know this, the Canadian Stroke Foundation was created to try and pin strokes on chiropractors, like totally insane stuff, right? And so he would share this kind of stuff with me and I would kind of see, I would see, um, I would see the injustice, I guess, if you will, towards chiropractors. So when I met Sayer, when I moved here, he was just working at a grocery store, and I was talking to at a health food store that I would stop at and shop or get lunch at because it was between the office and home. And I was talking to this guy, and he has an off the charts IQ, and I'm like, who is this guy? He knows more about health than almost anybody I know. And it was all in his brain. It was incredible. And so I encouraged him to build this website called greenmedinfo.com, where he, well, now we have the research, we house the database of 100,000 peer-reviewed articles from the National Library of Medicine only. So it's peer-reviewed gold standard research that supports natural healing, right? And I saw that we needed that as a teenager because of what my father went through. And then also obviously being in practice and like having that support, that third party kind of support. Not that I felt like I needed that, but it's helpful to have that information. So he was building this, I was supporting him and encouraging him. And then eventually I became a partner of his in GreenMed Info. And then, we started getting deplatformed and all that stuff prior to the pandemic. And we started Stand for Health Freedom, now run by Executive Director Leah Wilson, who her husband's a chiropractor who trained in my office in Naples, Florida, right? All that kind of stuff came from, I feel like watching what my father, what my uncles went through in their chiropractic career, because they were sharing with us. They were sharing with us as children, like kind of not little kids, but teenagers, what they were going through. And I thought that was very helpful to inform kind of my life's purpose and mission.
One of my favorite quotes is from BJ, is that something that you think, say, or do today can affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And that's, you're a clear-cut example of that, is that just living in that environment with your dad and being involved in his mission as a chiropractor rubs off on you, creates a fire in your belly, and you're making some incredible changes in your life now, not to mention the fact of moving your whole family from Canada to the United States, having to go through that whole visa acquisition process, and now running a busy practice. And I know you've had some challenges with your visa,
Yeah.
but all of the other things that you're into now, and advancing the profession, but advancing the whole philosophy of the profession in many different avenues. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, where do I go with that? I mean, ultimately, like, you know, chiropractic, I always keep the main thing the main thing. Dr. Sid Williams used to say that. Keep the main thing the main thing. And it's focused on chiropractic philosophy and getting that out to the masses. So all these additional things are always for the one purpose, is actually to promote like an innate led life, right? And realistically, I would say that my philosophy, the chiropractic philosophy, has informed my life, has allowed me to make life choices that are in alignment, I believe. Like even if you think back, Colin, like you already knew like cholesterol meds were a bad idea. Why did you know that? Because you're like, no, that's against that kind of goes, it's irrational when you understand that there's a universal intelligence, it's all matter, which continually gives its properties and actions, thus maintaining this matter in existence. It just goes against that. So you're like, no, wrong. Well, now we're being shown that, yeah, we were right. You know what I mean? During the pandemic, masks. Oh, no, that's wrong. It doesn't line up with our philosophy. It's 6 feet apart. It doesn't line up with our philosophy. Getting injected to to have a fake immunity doesn't align. You see what I'm saying? Even when people ask about diet and stuff, they're always like, what's the best diet? And I believe that there are specific diets that will help certain people in certain ways. But the overarching, if you have no interference, right, and you're a connected human being, just look at how God designed it. Look at innate wisdom. It's a regenerative farm is the way you should eat. Whatever's on a regenerative farm is good for you. And it's proving to be the best kind of food that we should eat, right? And so I feel like ultimately all of those, whether it's GreenMed Info, whether it's Stand for Health Freedom, whether it's the three practices that I have, and other investments that I've made that are almost everything is related to health, is to push the chiropractic message forward of living a life without fear. And that's why I mean, like our philosophy gives us the ability to live with life without fear, as Fred Barge wrote in his book from 40, 50, 60 years ago, or something like that. And I think because maybe this isn't a right statement, but because I've stayed true to that, I would say that I've been given opportunities that maybe others haven't. I've been very close to Robert Kennedy here lately and helping with the campaign, and been offered positions and different things like that for the Make America Healthy Again movement. But the only reason that is because uh, I have we have a principle and a philosophy that's in alignment with what the world is looking for,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey,
right?
and I want to open the door for you here. So can you talk about that? We were talking a little bit before the podcast, and I find this absolutely fascinating. I would love for you to share what you're able to share in that direction.
Okay, well, I, I can't share everything, but I will share that I will be involved helping with health and human services at some level. Not at the level that they want me to because I'm Canadian and it doesn't allow me to do that. But I will be involved, because I'm a chiropractor, which is fascinating. Like when I was in Washington last week, for the hearings, or 2 weeks ago, maybe now, for the hearings, and it's incredible at the love and support that chiropractors have, and we don't even know it. Like I feel like we don't even own it. Like we still feel like our profession still thinks and feels like the redheaded stepchild, which is not the right thing to say, but like a second class citizen from 25, 45, 55 years ago. And we're passing down this DNA to the next generation when no, 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 we should be, as my teenage daughter says, our profession should be glowing up. Like we should have this incredible glow up because this is our moment in time where they're asking us for advice. They're coming to us for what to do, right? Like we have these power structures that have been around for generations now that have ultimately completely failed. I mean, come on, just look at the level of health in Canada. Look at the level of health in the US. People are fat, sick, and nearly dead, like the documentary says. I mean, it's ridiculous what's happening. And people are looking for other, for other avenues, right? So now you have this whole cohort of medical doctors who are now, well, I'm an integrative doctor, so I'll treat your cholesterol with this instead of the drug, right? And that's moving the pendulum in this direction, but it's not our philosophy. It's better, right? But it's not all the way into like this like life of full expression that we want people to live and live by, and kind of guide, allow that philosophy to guide their lives. But it's moving in that direction. That's why they want us to be there. It's so freaking fascinating and exciting what's happening right now. It's really unbelievable. Unbelievable. So there are chiropractors who are potentially moving into very important positions within the administration because the world is asking for what we have. They just don't even know where to look for it because we've been stuck kind of fighting amongst ourselves and living small, right? But there's literally this renaissance, this rebirth that's happening right now, much like the Renaissance in the 1500s, where there was total oppression by the lords and the noblemen and those people, and so the rest of the people were kind of oppressed, right? And they didn't have freedom of thought, freedom of thinking, freedom of movement, and all those things. The same thing is happening now in healthcare. There's a renaissance in healthcare where they're looking for a vitalistic philosophy that allows them to build and regenerate health, build it, maintain it, and like achieve optimum health. And we have that for people if we can step into our greatness, right? And so that's what's so exciting about this moment right now. Come on, we've been doing this forever. Have you ever seen a time in history that is this ripe for chiropractic? And I know because I've been to seminars since I was a little kid that at every generation, the speakers say the same thing, but nowhere near is it this close right now. Like literally, we're going to have hopefully millions of dollars pouring into chiropractic research and chiropractic education, like hundreds of millions, not millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that was never there. Government supported. Not that we want to be supported by the government, but all of this is, the pendulum is swinging in our direction. It's very, very exciting right now.
Well, this is huge conversation because, and I've always said that I believe that there is a master plan for this profession, and from a spiritual sense, I do believe that chiropractic will be the leading profession for healthcare, and I want to do everything in my power to try to create that to happen. And I truly believe that the whole pandemic was a platform for everything to be happening now. And this is really brilliant. The fact that you are now in the inside circle of what's happening at the government level. What do you foresee? And I know obviously talking about different funding and promoting chiropractic schools and whatnot, but now you're talking about being directly involved in some of these decisions. what can you specifically foresee for the profession moving forward with Robert F. Kennedy being as the HHS secretary and you being involved? What do you see happening?
Well, okay, first of all, let's put a little bit of a dose of reality to this, okay? Because we're looking at power structures that are absolutely massive. Okay, and just so you know, HHS has 91,000 employees, 91,000, right? And so it's what, I maybe had too much of a rose-colored glasses or a utopian type of view of what might be or might not be possible. Um, and having been there and kind of seen a little bit of the workings of how it works, it's going to be much more difficult than I believed maybe a month or two ago. Okay, so it's not like he's going to get in there and everything's going to change, but he's going to be able to make extremely important changes that will allow us to have freedom of choice, informed consent, parental rights, like just religious freedoms as it relates to health, and also science-based healthcare. Because after being in practice for what you've been in practice for like 98 years now, or
It's 97. Yeah, no.
97
Yeah.
years.
Mm.
I'm close. I'm just right behind you.
Mhm.
But you know that if they did the research on who's healthier, chiropractic patients or non-chiro or just medical patients, you know what that shows. So if we're funneling money towards things of outcome assessments rather than does this drug increase this one, molecule in the body, you know that where that's going to go, and you know what results that will yield. But that doesn't happen overnight. That happens over time. So I foresee excellent funding for all of natural healthcare. I foresee many chiropractors becoming, like many more, having a track for like PhD research chiropractors to be in very important positions and huge decision-making positions. I foresee, more importantly than all that kind of stuff, that already what's being shown to us is that there's at least half of the population who's absolutely ripe and ready to take care of their health in a totally different way. That's not like dependent on the government in Canada or insurance companies here, where they have to take, radical responsibility for their health. And so it's only good. Like I only foresee good stuff for chiropractors, but I feel like we have to get out of our own way. Chiropractors are generally small thinkers, and we're worried about what the person down the street is doing in their office versus what's happening in our office and what's happening in our communities, right? And so, that thinking has to change. You know what I mean? We need all of us. Not everybody's, like I said, it's half the population who's already there, right? The other half maybe isn't. So, if a chiropractor down the street practices in a way that's suitable for that other patient, great. Welcome them. Like, thank them. Be thankful that they're there. There's no need to talk bad against. I've never, it's the worst thing we could do is talk bad against other chiropractors and other natural healthcare providers. It's just not right. It's not cool. It's not what we need now. I believe this movement could actually unite chiropractors as well, because there's a place for everybody here,
Yeah,
right? I only see like amazing things that are accelerating. The timeline has accelerated, but we have to be ready and open for it.
for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. So let me ask you, so where does your future go? Like, what does your future look like? Do you have any big goals in your mind that you would like to see happen while you're on the face of this earth?
Oh boy. Do I have big goals? Of course I have big goals. It's that's a, ultimately I would love for people to have the opportunity to be in healthcare raised the way that I was. Right. And so that's adjusted from birth. We're eating healthy foods. I mean, we used to drive to the farm to pick up our dairy and eggs when I was a little kid. I can remember that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my driving purpose. Like I know the difference between somebody who lives the chiropractic philosophy and somebody who doesn't. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I want people to have access to. They can choose to or not to, but I would love for the world to have access to that and the opportunity to live it. It's such a better life. I mean, you're connected, mind, body, spirit. I mean, that's the essence of chiropractic, right?
Amazing. That's awesome. And so my heart, and we haven't really had many recent conversations about this, but my heart is in the school system for chiropractic, and I would really love to see another school planted in Canada. I mean, we only have two chiropractic schools now, really only one that's making any headway, because the one in Quebec is very, very small. It's only French speaking. So CMCC has a monopoly on the students in Canada. More chiropractic students come to the States for education than they actually stay in Canada. So I would love to see another school planted in Canada. Is there anything on your heart that talks about the education system and where it needs to go?
Um, well, of course. I mean, come on, like, the education in chiropractic, although good, is not great. But I want to be very careful here because I don't want to give people the ability to blame outside, whether it's their school or their professor or their friend at school who kind of affected their whole life and profession. No, 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 no. I feel like that's a very dangerous road to tread down. Like ultimately, you to have to take radical responsibility for where you are in your life, for the education that you had or didn't have, because realistically, especially nowadays, you can get all the education you want just off your darn computer. You can become a chiropractor-ish from your computer. If you want to learn a technique, you can learn it here. You can go to seminars, you can read books about it. I mean, you have unlimited resources in order to become the best that you can be, right? So I don't want to sit here and like bash schools. That's not it. I'm super thankful I went to Life University. My dad started at CMCC and left because he discovered the philosophy of chiropractic, didn't get it there. So he left and came down to Palmer because Life University didn't exist back then, right? And then I went to Life University. I was super thankful for my education, but can it be better? Absolutely, it can be better. I think more, yeah, philosophical centered, and then also more hands-on. Like you got to be able to deliver the goods. You know what I mean? You got to be able to adjust the spine, correct the subluxation, reconnect the physical and spiritual of that human being, and like then you're winning, right? And the people are winning.
So is there ever a chance in your future that you're moving back to Canada, or are you down in the States for good now?
Well, I mean, I never say never, but I cannot see my wife and I were walking on the beach, which is just a few blocks in that direction. And like maybe this was like 6 months ago or something like that. And she's like, okay, where to next? And it turns out she was just testing me to see like, did I want to leave somewhere or what, like, what are we doing? And I'm like, I don't think there's a next. I think this is it. Like, I absolutely love it down here. I love Canada too, but I just love being here on the beach, in the sunshine. It's like incredible. So I can't foresee myself moving back to Canada,
And
but
and how about your
say
kids? I
never.
mean, you have two exceptionally blessed children. What are they doing? Are they following in dad's footsteps, or do they have their own path right now?
They have zero interest in becoming chiropractors. Zero interest, actually, because everybody asks them that, right? They're like, "Oh, are you going to be a chiropractor like your dad?" And they're like, their answer is like, "Oh no, boring. He just stands there and like does the same thing all day long." And I'm like, "It's different." And I go from room to room. Everyone's different. I love what I do. And anyways, yeah, they have zero interest. My daughter's at the University of Tampa. My son's going to University of Pennsylvania. And yeah, they're on their own paths and loving life, and I'm loving that they're loving life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let me just ask you, any final thoughts for you? And I want to just kind of end on this note, because you've been a mentor to so many different chiropractors who are now in the profession doing big things. And many of them that I know and I've talked to personally credit their time of training with you in Naples to their huge success right now. So, what would you say to young docs or students, or perhaps even docs that have been in the profession for a long time and are not where they want to be? They're either unfulfilled or they're unhappy or struggling, or maybe not seeing the numbers or people or income that they would like to see. what would be your advice to that group of people?
Oh, it's such a nuanced question. It's just hard to give like one sweeping answer for everybody, right? Um, so, I guess what I would say is you have to get uncomfortable. That would be my advice. You have to get uncomfortable because when you're with a patient one-on-one, if you're telling them everything that you want to tell them, or if you're holding back something because of fear of what they're going to think. If you're holding back somewhere, you're not living your purpose. You're blocking your success with that patient and in your whole life. Because if it's happening there, it's happening everywhere. You know that if, I don't know, you have an issue with a team member and you deal with it, but not directly, you kind of beat around the bush instead of dealing with it directly, and it doesn't really solve the issue or whatever the case is, you know that that's holding you back to a certain level. And that thing follows you everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in Winnipeg, doesn't matter if you're in Naples, it doesn't matter where you are, that thing follows you everywhere. And so for you to break through from wherever you are, I believe that whatever that thing is that's holding you back, like your truth to live your destiny, I think that you have to get uncomfortable and deal with that thing, right? Which might be setting up talks in your community. But for a lot of people, maybe it's adjusting better. Who knows? Like being an incredible adjuster. Maybe it's talking directly to patients and learning how to do that at a better, higher level. There's many things that hold us back, and really it's only you that knows exactly what that is for you. And so when people would come to train here, Colin, and there's been 125 who've come here over the years, so it's been incredible. So they spend 6 months to a year here, and most of the work that we would do for them is like kind of pulling away the layers of BS that they've kind of built up in their life. So kind of unhusking all of the stuff that they grew up with in order to allow their own light to shine. And that's what it is. When you get uncomfortable and you deal with those things, you allow your light to shine brightly. And the brighter it shines, the more people are attracted to it. The brighter it shines, the more change you make and can make. Right. And so that's what I would advise people. I hope that helps a little bit or makes a little bit of sense. But it's not the same for everybody, but you have to find out what it is for you.
That's such a brilliant answer, Joel. And I do hope, obviously you being a Canadian in Naples and whatever restrictions have been put on you, in this next stage of your life, I hope that that can be overcome because I truly feel this, and I'm saying this as your good friend. You are such an asset, not just to this profession, but to the people that you come into contact with. And I know that everybody that I know that has met you or been able to spend some time with you, you have left such a huge impact upon their life. So I give you tremendous credit and accolades for that. So thank you.
And I feel the exact same way about you, Colin. You're such a like straightforward, awesome dude, and I really appreciate you. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I can't say how grateful I am to have you on the podcast today. This has been a really, really good one. And I mean, we keep going. I want to respect your time, but let's continue this conversation. Maybe we'll have to set up another one.
Sounds great. Be happy to come back.
All right, Dr. Joel Bohemier, thank you so much.
All right. Peace, everybody.